LoG, and welcome to another edition of turning exercises into musical tools that you can use in your day-to-day playing. Today's exercise is going to be the most physically demanding of all of the exercises we've talked about in this mini-series. Really great for finger strength and really great for finger independence, but it can also very easily yield some of the coolest and most unique sounding musical moves you can use in your playing once you get over how physically difficult some of these passages can be. Of course, this is a long video, so use the chapters to navigate. And as usual, if you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out the Patreon in the link in the description. Let's get started. The exercise that will be the foundation for pretty much every idea we're going to go over in this video sounds something like this. So I've actually done a YouTube short on this exact exercise a while ago, and in that short, I mentioned where I got this exercise from, and that is a classical guitar technique book called Pumping Nylon by a classical guitar player named Scott Tennant. It's a really, really great book focused on technique. If you're remotely interested in fingerstyle technique or classical guitar technique, highly recommend you check it out. It's a small book. It's an easy read. Tons of great stuff in there, tons of exercises, a couple tunes that kind of help build certain techniques. It goes super deep into a lot of topics, like it's got a section on the length of your nail and the angle of your nail, all that good stuff. It's a really great book. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. So this exercise is about finger independence, which you can probably tell because you can see these kind of interesting little combinations of notes. Like we've got pinky, pointer finger, ring, then pinky, middle, then ring. You know, these are all little movements that you might not naturally play in your everyday playing, especially if you're just doing normal electric guitar stuff. So you're going to feel that immediately, these different finger movements that you might not be used to. Now that is tricky and valuable to practice, but that is not why this exercise is difficult or why it's important, which we'll talk about here in a second. First, let's just go over generally what's happening so you can start getting it in your fingers. So I'm on two strings and I'm always alternating between those two. So I'm playing high string, low string, just like picking back and forth between them. And the strings that I am playing right now are the high string for the high string, and then the G string for the low string. You can kind of do whatever combination you want, it doesn't really matter, but that is what I'm doing right here. And the pattern is this: I start on the high E string, and then I jump to the G, then high E string, G, high E string, G, high E string, G, like that. But what each string is doing is actually kind of the same thing, just kind of offset by a note. The high E string is literally just chromatic scale walking down, right? It's pinky, ring, middle, pointer, pinky, ring, middle, pointer over and over again. And then the G string is also a descending four-finger chromatic scale, except we start on the pointer finger and then the pinky, ring, middle, pointer, pinky, ring, middle, pointer. So it's just offset by a note. So I'm going to play the exercise, and I want you to first listen to the high E string, and you'll hear that little chromatic walking down melody. So focus on the high E string when I play it right here. I'll sing that high E string. Bum, 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 bum. Like that. So now I'm going to do the same thing, play it again, but let's focus on the low string now. So you'll hear bum, 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 like that. So check it out. Bum, 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 bum. Right? So what you have essentially is two independent lines or independent melodies that are moving kind of counter to each other. One is happening while the other is happening at the same time. And this is really important for classical music or classical guitar because that's a common thing in that world, to have multiple melodies moving simultaneously. So this exercise just gives you a very, very basic version of that and helps you get comfortable with that style of playing. Now, this is where the most important thing comes from. When you are playing melodies, like if I just play a straight up chromatic scale like this, just walk down, right? Sounds like that. Notice what I am doing. You hear the note, it's lasting its full length, and then I play the next note, it's lasting its full length, I play the next note, it's lasting its full length, so on and so forth. But if I play it the way I just played it, notice what it sounds like. If I just isolate that high string, it sounds like this. Listen to it one more time. Check it out. What's the difference? What's going on right here? My notes are not being held their full length. I am cutting them a little short. Instead of this, the note being held the entire length, it sounds like this. And so does the low note too. Instead of the low note lasting its full length, it sounds like this. Now, why is that? Why is that happening? Because when I'm playing this exercise the way I just played it, the way I'll play it right now, what I am doing is playing a note, and then when I move to play the low note, the kind of other melody, I release pressure off of the first note and kill the note when I play the next. You see, that's happening every time. When I pick this note, the other note I just played before is dead. Now when I go to pick this note, pinky dies. Then I go to pick the ring finger, pointer finger dies. Then when I go to pick the pinky, ring finger dies. So what you're hearing is one note at a time, ba boop, ba boop, ba boop, ba, like that. That is not what the exercise is. What we want to do is have both melodies last their full note lengths. So what we want to hear is this while this is happening. So what does that mean? How do we achieve that? To do this, you must hold the note that you are playing into the next note. So check this out. I'm going to play the first three notes. This is incorrect. It just sounds like ba, boop, ba. All the notes are dying when I'm done playing them. But now watch this. You see what I mean? I play this note. I let it ring while I play this note. And then while this note is ringing, I go to play the next. See, when I play this high string note, that top melody, the first note of the low melody is still ringing. Okay, check it out. Then when I go to play the second note of the low melody, the second note of the high melody is still ringing. You still hear that ring finger note ringing while I go for this pinky note. Watch this. You still hear that high E string ringing, right? So what is happening? How am I achieving this? Two things. Number one, I am not releasing pressure on my finger until the note length is done, okay? So I'm holding this note for the entire length, bam, and then I move to the next, while also doing it on the lower melody. So if I play it really slow, notice that I am not releasing pressure. I'm not lifting my finger until the length of the note is finished. So you see that move right there? My middle finger's down. Middle finger's still ringing when I go to restart the whole thing with the pinky up top. While the pinky is ringing, I then go for the pointer finger on the G string. So the notes will always overlap as you continue through. And when you play it like this, it gives the illusion that there are two guitars playing one melody and another guitar playing the other melody, right? If you kind of imagine that's the scenario. One guitar, right? The other guitar doing this. Just offset rhythmically, of course. That is going to be the most difficult part of this exercise for most people, especially electric guitar players, because muting notes that you just played and preventing those notes from bleeding over into the next is kind of a common way to play, right? Especially if you're playing with distortion, muting is a big part of playing. You don't necessarily want the note you just play to bleed over into the next. That keeps it clean, especially when you're playing with distortion, like I mentioned. This is the opposite of that. We want the note to bleed over into the next to give us that illusion of those two melodies happening simultaneously, like there are two guitar players playing. But if you accidentally do one of two things, release the pressure too early, killing the note, or accidentally hit the string with like the underside of your finger, which also kills the note, that breaks that illusion, right? It doesn't really feel like two independent melodies like that. So that's something that you're definitely going to have to practice if you've never done this before. In particular, the holding pressure thing. Of course, you want to make sure that your fingers aren't flat on the string. So for example, if I do this, See my pinky, how flat it is? I went to go play this G string note, but because my pinky is so flat, it actually killed the high E string. So you want to make sure your fingers are up on their fingertips like normal. This is definitely an exercise where playing with proper technique, thumb on the back, fingers on the fingertips, against the frets, all that stuff, that will make this a lot easier. But even with the perfect technique, I'm going to bet that if you've never done this before, the hardest thing is making sure that you're holding pressure for the entire length of the note. So when you're practicing this, what I want you to do is record yourself somehow. So pop your phone up on your desk. If you're using recording software, use that, whatever, because I can almost guarantee, if you've never done this before, notes are going to accidentally die early and you might not realize it. You might not notice, you might not catch it in the moment. That's why you want to record yourself so you can listen back without worrying about playing and, listen to it in like a third person perspective, and you'll be able to catch, oh, my ring finger note always dies early. Let me focus on that. Or on the turnaround, my pointer finger to middle finger or whatever. Middle finger always dies early. Whatever it is, you'll be able to catch the moments that are not sounding as smooth as you want, and you can fix them like that. I guarantee you, because this happened to me too, I would play this and I would think, yeah, I'm nailing it. And then I would record myself and realize, oh, there's like definitely notes I'm not holding as long as I need to. So you need to hear this in a third-person perspective, because there are little nuances that might pass you by, and you don't want those nuances to happen all the time and become habit, right? You definitely want to catch those mistakes so you're doing it cleanly. So that's the exercise. Really great. We're going to go through a bunch of kind of musical approaches for this exercise in this video. But one last little variation on this exercise that might be kind of fun. It's a little ridiculous, but it's fun, I think. And that's basically the same thing, but you constantly move the low melody down one string at a time. The high melody always stays on the high string. So basically, whenever you restart the low melody with your pinky, so instead of going back to pinky on the same string, you go to the next string and do it again. So the low melody will sound like this. I'm going to start on the B string, then G string, then D string, then A string, right, and then low E string, while the top melody is still doing its thing. So that sounds like this. See if I can do it. I'm on the E string and B string, by the way, to start off. Watch this. Traveling to the G string. Traveling to the D string. To the A string. Getting difficult. Difficult E string. A little ridiculous, but that's kind of a fun one if you want to try it. And again, the goal is making sure that the notes are ringing out as long as possible, so it sounds like two independent melodies with notes being held for their full length. So hopefully all that stuff makes sense. Sit there, get it comfortable if you want, because now we're going to take these ideas and see if we can come up with some musical figures that are very easy to apply to a bunch of situations. The first idea that we're going to come up with is essentially the exact same thing as the exercise, except we're simply going to put it into a key using a plain major scale. Very, very simple approach. Might not be that easy to play, but creating these ideas will be very simple. We're going to do this in the key of B flat because, like the other videos, at the end of this video, we will play over a backing track in that key. So just to keep things consistent, we're going to do the key of B flat. So first we need to find a B flat major scale. So I'll play one right here. There's a B flat, and here's a simple little B flat major scale. Of course, this is root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then root. Now, it's also really important to make sure that we have some other options for these notes in the area in case we need a different fingering. So for example, if I play this scale, I know this is the root, second, and then third, but I also know this is a D, by the way. I also know that that D, this third, is located here as well. So I can play root, second, third, but I can also play root, second, third. Super important to think about the fretboard like this because you want all of the options available in case you need to modify. And on the Patreon, this is how I teach scales. I have a series called The Fretboard Method, basically how I look at the fretboard. But the way I go through scales is not positional. It's not like the cage system or the 5 positions. You play the scale here and then there and then there. The way I do it is more oriented around fingering and not position. So for example, I will see this B flat and I will go over all of the different scale configurations where this is your starting note. And what you'll notice is you'll have scales, or you'll have note locations that take you to different areas of the fretboard, that orient you to a different area of the fretboard based on this root. So for example, this scale shape right here, this classic one starting with the middle finger, I would call that center shape. There's my root, and the notes are kind of centered around this. I've got a little third to the left over here, and I've got some other notes to the right over there. You can kind of see that shape. Hallmark of this particular configuration is I'm starting with my root on my middle finger. But what happens if my root was on the pinky, right? This would put me in a different area and orient me now to the left of my root. So that would be this, or any variation, right? I would call that left shape. And then of course, if my root was on my pointer finger, if that was the fingering I was choosing, I could do this. All the same scale, but now look at the orientation. I'm now moving this way. So if you have that root in mind and you think about the note locations like this, you'll see a single root and all of the notes will kind of spider web out from that single position. In my opinion, this is, I don't want to say this is the best way, to each their own. Everyone has their own preferences. But for me, as a player, I want options. I don't want to be forced into a particular scale shape where I must play the notes this way because that's what the scale looks like. I want every option possible in case I need to modify my fingering. I want to say, here are my notes. I can play them like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. Like, I want that because there might be a really cool idea that maybe is an uncomfortable fingering. And if I'm only thinking about position and not fingering, there's a chance that I might have this cool lick and think, I guess it's just going to be a difficult fingering. I'll just have to put up with it. But instead, I might have a cool lick with a difficult fingering, and I can immediately say, this lick is cool, the fingering's difficult, let's find five more different fingerings, and then I can choose or find one that's more comfortable. Or maybe I'll find a fingering that will yield new ideas because of where it takes me, or the fingers I'm using, or the sounds that I'm getting. It's really, really important to not approach scales only positionally. Like, I'm gonna play this scale here, and now I'm gonna play it here. Like, that's good. It's not, a bad thing. You just want to make sure you can break out of that. And the way to approach that is always think about fingering, the different ways to play the exact same notes. That's how the guitar is structured. That's how you should be thinking about it. So that's a little side note, but it's going to play heavily into what we're doing today because fingering is so important when it comes to creating these ideas. Because remember, what are we doing most of the time? We are holding notes while playing others. And if your fingering is not right, it just won't be possible, which you'll see here in a moment. So again, if you're interested in that, you can check out the Patreon in the link in the description. So let's just create a very simple melody that is reminiscent of the exercise, right? That, of course, is the exercise. So what do we have? That exercise was walking down on top, right? Chromatic. And the bottom one was doing a similar thing, right? So that's what I'm going to do here as well, but keep it super simple, super short. My B flat major scale. I'm going to play the top melody on the B string. I'll start here. And for the low melody, I'm also going to start here, down an octave. Exactly how the exercise started. The exercise started here for the high melody, and then the low melody was simply the same note, down an octave. That is what I'm going to do right here. My top melody starts on the root up top. What am I going to do for that top melody? How about I just walk down a couple notes? I'll just walk down like root, 7th, 6th, 5th. Literally just walking down the scale. It doesn't get simpler than that. And then for the low melody, I'll just go the opposite direction. I'll just walk up, right? So how about root, 2nd, 3rd? Again, doesn't get easier. So my top melody is going to be root, walking down, 7th, 6th, 5th, while my low melody, alternatively, rhythmically, will start on the root, walk up 2nd, and then 3rd. So watch this. Root, 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 7th, 2nd, right? You can already see fingering is starting to become an issue because I'm going to play 6th, but then what's my bottom melody need to do? I just played 1, 2. 3 is going to be my bottom melody. So right off the bat, you can see that I need to change my fingering. Let's try something else. Root, root, then 7th, 2nd, 6th, 3rd. Now that's working, but then something happens. That's my 5, the bottom note, the last note of my top melody. But notice what happens. It's on the same string as the 3rd I just played right here. Well, that defeats the purpose. I want to hear this third ring while I play. This is the last note of the low melody, while I play the last note of the high melody. But if they're on the same string, I can't let them ring together because you can't play two notes on the same string at the same time. This is where fingering comes into play. Let's get some fingerings. So instead of this, I'm going to play this and see what happens there. Let's do it really slow. Already, I mean, I need to play at this point. See this 6 right here? I'm on my middle finger. I need to get to this 5th. You can see this fingering is not working. So what I'm now going to do is instead of changing the 5th of my top melody to there, I'm going to change the low melody. So 1, 2, 3. How about 1, 2, 3? Again, because I have these options, I can mess with the notes, mix them around until I get a fingering that gives me what I'm going for. So let's try that. Instead of 1, 2, 3 for my low melody, 1, 2, 3 for my low melody. Top melody will simply be this. Let's try it. First note of the top, first note of the bottom. Top melody, bottom melody. Top melody, bottom melody, top melody. Works perfectly. Can hold the notes really nicely. I can even hold all 3 of these if I want to, like the top melody notes plus that bottom note. Pretty cool. One more time. This is a nice shape, and notice we're getting that same kind of dual melody movement. You hear bum, 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 while you also hear bum, bum, bum at the same time. It's a really cool sound. It's very colorful because you're getting these kind of interesting interactions between the notes. So that's a nice structure. Notice it's also very short. I'm not doing a super long one, although I'll do that later on, but I want to just get my feet wet with the idea, so I'm keeping it really short. After I have that, the next thing that I'm going to do to make sure I have access to this is play it on other strings. Okay, so I'm starting here on this B flat, and I'm going B flat, walking down. That's my fingering. I'm going to do the same thing now on these B flats and see what it would look like. And with this position, it's going to look a little bit different because of the tuning of the guitar, but it'll look like this. Same idea, grabbing the notes in the same way. Top melody, 1, 7, 6, 5. Bottom melody, 1, 2, 3. Right? It's the same exact thing as this. Super colorful, right? Really nice. I like this sound. It's a unique sound that I could easily throw into whatever I want because it's just a major scale. It doesn't get simpler than that. And then, of course, you do it on the other strings, so on and so forth. The next thing I would do, and this is where a lot of color comes in, you do the same exact idea, but you take the idea and play it on each chord of the key, giving you essentially this pattern that runs you through the key. Because while I am doing it on a B flat major scale, I'll kind of do it right here so we can have the whole fretboard to travel up. While I am doing it on a B flat major scale, this is really what? The 1 chord of B flat. Right? I'm playing 1, 7, 6, 5 for my top melody and 1, 2, 3 for my bottom melody of B flat, the 1 chord in that key. But what happens if I wanted to take this same exact structure but not do it on B flat, the 1 chord of the key? I want to do it on C minor, the 2 chord of the key, right? B flat's 1, C minor is 2. We've talked about this many times throughout this little series because that's always the key that we've been playing in. So what I'm going to do now is the same movement. What was the movement? Top melody, 1, 7, 6, 5. Low melody, 1, 2, 3. But now I'm going to do it thinking of C minor. So I'm going to start here on C, the 2 chord of the key. So I'm going to play C minors, 1, 7, 6, 5, and C minors for the low melody, 1, 2, 3. Well, I need to know the sound of the 2 chord. What is the sound of the 2 chord? Minor, pentatonic. So we will have 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. And then I'll also have a 2, and then a natural 6, right? The natural 6 being that specific color note. We've talked about this. People call this Dorian. I just call it what it is, the sound of the 2 chord, okay? So as I'm coming up with this pattern, I need to make sure I modify the notes if I need to. The original pattern from the top. But now when I do it on C minor, here are my C's, root for C minor. What's the top melody going to look like? 1, C minor 7, which will be a flat 7, because it's minor. C minor 6, which will be a normal 6 because we are playing a 2 chord, and 2 chords have normal 6, that's the color note, and then a plain 5. So the top melody will go bum, 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 right? The bottom melody, which was what? 1, 2, 3. We're now playing C minor, so 1, 2, flat 3. So my melody, the original, I'll play it just for reference, sounds like this. When I do it on C minor, the 2 chord, pretty cool, right? Imagine doing that on top of C minor. Bum, 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 bum. That's the top melody, plus the bottom melody. Bum, bum, bum. Really cool flavor. And again, you're going to hear this over the backing track. But notice the pattern is the same. It's the same note structure. I'm now just taking all of those notes and doing it on top of C minor, the 2 chord. And then I'll do it on top of D minor, the 3 chord. And then E flat, the 4 chord, and hit every single combination. And you get some really interesting colors. Now, this is not the easiest thing in the world because you really have to think about what the notes will be. A big portion of this is kind of trust your ear as well. Your ear will point you towards where the correct notes are. But once you have a couple of these in your hands, such an easy and cool figure to toss in that gives you this really unique sound. And again, the figure is very short. I'm not doing a super long one, keeping it short to keep it simple and kind of easier to adapt all the chords. So without getting into the weeds, I'll kind of let you figure out what this would be as you go through all the chords. And just to keep the video from not getting too long, I'm going to run every chord in the key, and you can see what this exact pattern will sound like as I play everything. So I'll put the chords up on the screen so you can kind of see which ones I'm playing. Starting on B flat, the 1 chord. C minor, the 2 chord. Again, the pattern is exactly the same. It's always the chord I'm on's 1, 7, 6, 5 for the top melody, low melody 1, 2, 3. Now I'm on D minor, the 3 chord. It's going to sound like this. It's a really cool one. Imagine kind of D being in the bass. Now I'm getting some kind of interesting notes that maybe don't perfectly line up with D minor, but it still sounds really great over that sound. Just to recap this, what's the sound of the 3 chord? Minor, flat 2, flat 6, also known as Phrygian. I just call it the 3 chord. Check out what the notes are on top. It's 1, 7, which is flat, 6, which is flat, 5, which is normal. And then the low melody is 1, 2, 3, 1, which is normal, but flat 2 and flat 3. See that? Now, you don't have to play this on D minor, of course. You can play this anywhere in the key. I'm just looking at it like that because that's what the original structure was. Let's recap, and I'm going to run through everything without talking. It'll sound like this. 2 chord. Again, trying to hold all the notes together to keep that sound. Keep that dual melody sound, 3 chord. Okay, 4 chord, same thing. I'm now on E flat. Looks exactly the same as the 1 chord, by the way, because all of these notes would be the same. The 4 chord has a normal 1, 7, 6, 5, and a normal 1, 2, 3, just like the 1 chord. 5 chord is going to look similar, except it has a flat 7. So now I'm on F major. That's a difficult one because I have to hold the ring finger, then reach for the pinky if I want to maintain the sound of the exercise where you're holding the notes as long as possible. Tough one. 6 chord. Another tough one. The 7 chord is honestly my favorite one, just sound-wise. Really cool. And then back to 1. Oops. There we go. Kind of have a fret. I just got this re-fretted, and this fret right here is a little too high. Or no, this one's a little too high, and I kind of have I have a fretted out note right there, so I got to get that fixed. But you see that process, right? Really cool flavors. The structure of the notes, unbelievably easy. I have a melody on top. That's the easiest melody of all time. 1, 7, 6, 5. And I have a low melody on the bottom that I'm alternating with it. Another easiest melody of all time. 1, 2, 3. And you play them together, holding the notes together, so it gives it that illusion of 2 melodies. Super cool. The only other thing I will say with this, once you have them, run them to get comfortable with them. And then, of course, I would do this on every other set of strings because they are going to look different, right? So, for example, if I do it here, this is F. This would be the 5 chord of the key. I would play it on this set of strings. I'm now on the B string and D string. So that would look, of course, like this. Right? Really cool. And maybe jump back and forth between strings. Do it on B flat up here. Then do it down here. Experiment, do it on different, different sets of strings, different combinations. Maybe I'll do E flat right here. This is the G string and the A string. So this is going to look pretty different too. Probably difficult stretch. Right? Very difficult stretch, not the most feasible one, but still really cool and still something to definitely experiment with. So again, what's the process right here? Super simple idea. Taking the general structure of the exercise, 2 melodies, alternating, right? And we're literally just putting that structure in a key with a very simple passage. And then running through all the different chords in the sound, different chords in the key, I should say, and you get tons of options. And when we do this over the track, it's going to sound so cool. It's going to give a flavor that is just so unique alongside everything else you would be doing over that basic idea or over that basic style of track. Another thing you could do with this sort of idea is play these figures, these kind of dueling melodies, but simply play longer versions of them. So I'll kind of leave it up to you to figure out which melodies you want to combine. In reality, this really should be done as like a creative exercise. That's kind of how I did it when I was putting this video together. I wanted to get a longer version of this, and it was really fun just coming up with 2 melodies that worked together. Not only sounded cool, but were physically possible to play. So I'm going to play one. I'll talk about the one I'm doing, but in reality, you should really try to make your own because it's a great process. Really helps you understand the fretboard, trains your ear to hear these notes kind of going back and forth. And of course, it's difficult because the exercise itself is difficult. So what I ended up doing was this. I wanted a very, very simple top melody. And so I literally just walked down the scale. I'll do it right here. Again, off of B flat. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the top melody. I wanted that. And all I need to do was figure out what would the bottom melody be if that was the top melody. So the first thing you might notice, the top melody is walking down 3 strings. So the top melody will start to encroach on the territory of the bottom melody. So the bottom melody will also have to move down to thicker strings. But the interesting thing is the top melody naturally moves down because it's a moving down melody, right? But the bottom melody that I just played is not a moving down melody. It's moving up, right? Wasn't I moving up that bottom one? So now I just have to maybe slightly modify that bottom melody to give me something that works. So again, not going to get into the weeds of all the little moves that I'm making because I think you should, instead of copying what I'm doing, come up with your own, use my process, come up with your own ideas that sound cool to you. But the bottom melody that I chose after messing around with this was this. Top melody, walking down the scale. Bottom melody was this. 1, 2, 3. Then I played 6, 7, and then 4, 3. That's my bottom melody. So if I play the whole thing together, it sounds like this. Kind of difficult to play. Again, really striving to make sure I'm holding all these notes together. There's one moment that I always struggle with, and I'll show you where it is. It's right here. That. I can feel it. That moving from pinky ring and then putting middle finger and then lifting ring finger. That maneuver right there is very tricky. I can feel it. Yep, every time. That's also kind of awkward too. Middle ring, or ring, middle, and then ring goes back a fret, holding these 2 together and then pointer finger. And again, what's my melody? Top one. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bottom melody turned out to be, because I liked how it sounded and it was comfortable and it allowed me to play both, was 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 4, 3 of B flat. I'm only thinking of B flat right now. And then you can even walk back. That's a tough one. already screwing it up. That's definitely one I will definitely have to practice, holding all the notes at the same time. Super difficult. Such a great practice for the left hand. I can already feel my left hand just getting more comfortable, sinking into the fretboard, getting stronger, and these exercises are perfect for that. And as you will see when we play over the backing track and at the end of the video, they sound super cool, even though what I'm doing is unbelievably simple. Because it's these dueling melodies happening at the same time where the notes are bleeding together, you get these really interesting, almost chord sounds that sound super cool over a backing track. So again, don't necessarily copy what I'm doing. I mean, you can if you want. You can pause the video, see what I'm doing, rewind if you need to. But in reality, I would like you to make your own. It's the process of coming up with these is better than just simply running an exercise, right? Use this as a creative sort of exercise. So that's like a longer version, something you can do. I'm going to give you one more little modification that you can do. And again, you could take these ideas and run with it, do your own thing. Notice what I've been doing this whole time and what the exercise is. What is that? It's one note, one note, one note, one note, right? Top note, low note, back and forth. But then you can say, well, instead of doing one note at a time, high, low, how about I do like two notes? Two notes on the high melody, two notes on the low melody. Ba, ba, do, do, da, da, do, do. Something like that. Can I do that? And that's what I did. In this situation, I kind of did it up here because I was doing it over the track and I liked how it sounded in this area. And you could do something like this. Maybe I'll start on this note and I'll do two notes down here, then two notes up top, two notes down here, two notes up top, see what we get. So. And end with a chord. Let me get this. Yeah, it's my favorite. So notice how cool that sounds. It's the same idea, and it's definitely not easy to play, definitely took some time to figure out, but conceptually it's so easy. I'm just moving down, right? I'm just moving down, and my bottom melody is also adapting to that top melody, making sure things are playable. Again, knowing multiple fingerings will make this process so much easier. If you're trying to force all of this stuff into a generic box pattern, there's a really good chance that the fingering of that box pattern, that generic scale, will not allow you to play what you're trying to play. That's why it's so important that you have options and you can pick and choose the notes you want to play to make your idea playable, right? Almost every idea that you can possibly come up with is playable if you have the proper fingering. And this type of lick, this type of movement, this type of exercise really trains you to see the value of having multiple fingerings, right? I'm gonna do that one more time because it sounds awesome. So I'm starting with one note, two notes down here, two up top, two on the bottom. That one I still want to get in my hands a little bit better. I'm going to play it over the backing track later. It's one of my favorite sounds. It's just such a cool flavor. And again, structuring it out is not difficult. Physically playing it, getting the fingering is difficult. But once you're there, such a cool sound, so easy to create these things. So again, don't necessarily just copy what I'm doing. Take the general idea and create your own passages in the way you want. This next idea is, again, going to be pretty similar, kind of dueling melodies, and each melody is going to be doing a very simple thing. In this case, just walking up a scale. Doesn't get any easier than that. This one is also based on a figure that many of you are probably already playing. These little shapes that look like this. So let's say I'm on the A string and the G string, and I play these notes from the low to high like this. Probably already playing that, except you run through every instance of the shape in the key. So it would sound like this. Next one, next one, next one, next one, next, and last. Right? People will often call these sixths because the distance between this note, D in this case, and this note, B flat, will be 6 letters, right, in this key. So that would be like D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. That's why it's called a sixth, so they're 6 apart, right? Now, some of them will be different because some of the chords will have a major version of this sound or a minor version of this sound. But regardless, what you get is you get one melody on the bottom walking up like this, while you get the melody on the G string also walking up like that. Very, very common sound. Another way you can think about this, which is how I personally think about it, is what the notes would be in relation to the chord. If I play these two, D, B flat, you could look at that as 3-1 of that root, B flat in this case. And then if you play these two, that's E flat C, 3-1 again of this root, C minor. 3-1 of this root, 3-1 of this root. That's often how I will personally look at these. However, it could also be something else too. It could be 3-1 of B flat, D and B flat, right? But it could also be 5 and 3, flat 3 of G minor, right? You can look at those notes like that as well. That's kind of getting into the weeds, not super important, but that's what these phrases are. There's a common way to play this movement that is more difficult, but also really great for a technical and fretboard exercise where you do that exact run, right? Notice what I did right there. I kind of played it what I would call horizontally, right? I'm not changing strings. All I'm doing is changing frets. I'm constantly moving up this way. But if we were to play this figure vertically in one position, it would be very different feeling because the fingering changes. You have to force yourself to stay in one spot. So for example, instead of just these three, if I were to do that, let's say right here, it would look like this. It's the same exact thing, right? D, B flat, E flat, C, F, D in one position, D, B flat, E flat, C, F, D. Same thing, notice my fingering as well. Pointer, pinky, middle pointer, you might be inclined to just go like this, but that defeats the purpose, trying to stay in one position. So we'll do this and then that, right? You see the value of this, immediately you're getting some of that kind of finger twister, finger independent stuff from the original exercise. It's kind of happening right here, just simply playing these shapes as they are, right? And that's what it would be if I ran through everything. There are, of course, a couple different fingerings that you can choose from, but this structure, what we can do, because essentially, remember, it's just two notes, two different melodies walking up. That's the low one, the top one, right? Just happening at the same time. So we can turn this into an exercise that accomplishes the same thing we were doing before by simply playing the notes individually. In this case, I'm going to play low and then high. So it will sound like this. This one is already difficult. I'm already messing up. Already messing up. Very tough to hold this one down, especially with some of these stretches. So let's check out what's happening. These are the first little pattern. I'm just playing it like this. I'm playing them individually. Low note, high note. The next pattern, middle finger moves while my pinky is still holding. Pointer finger moves while my middle finger is still holding, right? Pinky moves while my pointer finger is still holding, right? Ring finger moves while my pinky is still holding. All that good stuff. I think you get the idea. This is a very difficult one. I'll tell you exactly where it's hard for me. Right here. Lifting the pinky while not lifting the ring finger. That's tough for me. I feel it immediately. Yep, there it is. So I did it better that time. So try this out. This is a tough one. You'll really notice your technical, finger weaknesses when you run stuff like this. And again, in my opinion, sounds awesome. It's so simple, two simple melodies, walking up a scale, nothing crazy, common sounds, but throwing it in to a backing track where you wouldn't naturally hear moves like this, such a cool sound. One other thing I would do with this, if you're practicing, something I've been kind of messing around with, is being very deliberate with the finger movements. Almost like your fingers are like marching on the fretboard, like that. It kind of like builds confidence in your fingers to know exactly which finger should go when. Almost like you're overplaying a little bit. It's a little ridiculous feeling. You probably don't want to do this when you're actually playing, but in practice, it does kind of feel like you're building confidence with the fingers. So that would look like this if I tried it. I'm starting on the right note. So pinky, middle finger, pointer, pinky. I already messed up. Do it one more time. Pointer finger, pinky, middle, pointer, pinky, ring, pointer, pinky. So notice I'm like almost lifting my finger and slamming them down on the frets to really tell my hand like, hey, this is the note right here. That's the note, just kind of marching through the part. So still lifting my pinky early. not be ideal. So you could also do this instead, walking up. Instead of doing this, which is a little ridiculous, you could do that, cover the bar, and then you have to play middle, pointer, like that. So again, the value of having fingering makes this process easier. Decent. I'm definitely getting better at it, but you can kind of see what's happening there. And this is with the interval of sixths, right? This kind of distance. You can kind of do this with whatever you want. Sixths happen to work really well because of the spread that they have, and they're just very melodic in their nature because you're usually playing just normal chord tones of the chords that are happening. I love those shapes. I'm going to play it over the backing track later on, and you'll see how effective it is. We can also add little variations to these shapes in a similar way that we did earlier. If you remember, our original shape was very simply a note on the top, note on the bottom, note on the top, bottom, just alternating like that. But then we did a variation where we were doing two notes on the top and the bottom. So that'll be like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Can we do something like that with this shape that we're now doing? We can, and there's a really easy way to do it, and I'll demonstrate it with the original kind of horizontal movement of this figure, right? Very simply, all we're going to do is this. Instead of low, high, low, high, low, high, we're going to play low, high, high, low, low, high, high, low, low, high, high, low, low, high, high, low. Like that. Very, very simple. It gives us this kind of snaking movement. Bum, 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 like that. Very common sort of figure. But we want to do this figure in one position, and we want to hold the note of one melody over the notes of the other melody. But now the melody is now two notes long, right? If I play this, notice that's one note on the bottom, but then two notes on top. I want this note to hold while the other two notes are also holding, right? Or also playing, I should say. So we have to keep that in mind and see if we run into any issues. So with our positioning that we are in right here, right? Can we do this figure? So low, high, high, low, low, high, high. There's a problem. I just found it. Notice what that problem was? Check this out. My low note is this pinky note, but the high notes are these two. I kind of need my pinky to lift and play the second note of the high melody. But I want this note to ring out. I could maybe do something like this. You know, slide my ring finger while my pinky is holding, but that's getting a little ridiculous. This is where having fingering or multiple fingering comes into play, because I know I don't have to play these two notes like this. I can play these two notes like this, right? That is a half step. So is this. So I can turn it into this. That's all good. See what I'm getting? Allowing my pinky to hold while I play the other two notes of the top melody all at the same time. And if I keep that mentality going, I can get the shape that looks like this. Super colorful. Remember what I'm doing. I am just doing this. Simplest shapes. I mean, these shapes are so simple, but the way I'm choosing to play it and force myself to hold the notes together gives me a really interesting sound that's so different than just running them like this. So again, forcing myself to stay in one position, forcing myself to hold the notes on top of the other ones so you can hear these dueling melodies gives us some really cool ideas. I'll play that one more time. Still working on this one. You can still hear some of the notes dying out earlier than they should. That was a little better. So yeah, and again, learning this exact lick, not really the point of the video, but take these ideas and create your own shapes with all of this in mind. One more tiny idea before we play over the backing track. It's not really a specific lick or shape. It's more of just an idea that you could do endless things with. And very simply, whatever you're playing, hold one of the notes down while you play other notes. So it's almost like you have two instruments, someone holding down like a root or something, and you are playing little notes on top. So let's say I'm playing C minor right here. Really simple. And I'm just going to hold this root with my middle finger and play notes on top, right? But the whole point of this is making sure that that root right there, that middle finger note, is being held down the whole time. You're not releasing pressure and killing the note. It's very difficult because your hand doesn't want that middle finger to be held down the whole time because you're so used to having all your fingers freely flopping around in the air. But in this case, you have to keep that note anchored, right? Very simple little thing to do. You could do a million things with this. I would also, if you're going to do this, try to do the same idea, but hold that note down with different fingers. So that was me holding it down with the middle finger. But now I'm going to hold it down with the ring finger. Of course, your options will be different because it kind of puts you in a different position. Different fingering yields different choices, like I've been talking about this whole video. But I could do, right? Maybe, there we go. Right, kind of like a little blues scale, that sort of thing. But notice that ring finger is being held the whole time. Not the easiest thing to play, right? But trying out with the ring finger, do the same thing with the pointer finger. Hold the pointer finger down while you play other notes. Same thing, hold the pinky down on that same note, excuse me. Right? That one's kind of cool because you get some nice stretchy options back here. Right, a lot of interesting ideas. Hold the note down, play other things. And you can do this with whatever sound you want. There's a couple figures I personally really like. Little major 7 figures look like this. So if I play E flat right here, hold the root down with the middle finger, just walk up the rest of the notes. Big fan of that. So that's holding root, playing 3, 5, 6, 7, and then 2 on top. Right? At the end of it, I'm kind of holding all 4 of these notes together. Right, again, what's the idea? Holding notes while you move other fingers. Very similar to what we've been doing the whole video. Same thing on B flat. Maybe do it on the A string. Right? Not the easiest thing to do. Also kind of a good excuse to practice using pick and fingers. This is a lot easier if you're using pick and fingers because oftentimes when you're picking, you might accidentally mute the thicker strings with like the side of your thumb. That oftentimes that's what you want to do. But when we're doing this, we don't want to be picking, for example, the G string and accidentally kill this D string because we want to hear it ringing the whole time. So you can use pick and fingers. Pick that D string, play with fingers for the rest of the notes, which allows your hand to kind of hover above the strings. Right? So very simple little idea, nothing really crazy. But that's something you can get a lot of creative work out of for sure because it's so simple. With all that in mind, let's take these ideas, play it over the backing track. All right, so just like the previous videos, we're going to be doing this over a backing track that is basically just a loop of C minor to F7. Very common movement, essentially the solo section for Mr. Magic by Grover Washington Jr. And just like we talked about in previous videos, we are in the key of B flat when we do this, and we are simply in that key, but only playing 2 and 5 of that key over and over again, right? And what's the sound of the 2 chord? Minor with a natural 6, which we're going to be accessing here with some of these ideas. And the 5 chord would be dominant 7, standard dominant, right? It's also important to know all of the other sounds in the key of B flat, so I'll just go over that one more time. So we're in the key of B flat, so B flat is 1, C minor is 2, the first chord of the backing track, D minor is 3, E flat major is 4, F major or F dominant is 5, the other chord of the backing track, G minor is 6, A minor 7, flat 5 is 7. And we might access some of the color notes of those chords and all that stuff as we go through, and if we do, I'll discuss it. So we're going to do the first idea, actually the idea that I just went over first, and that's simply holding a note and moving your fingers around above. And we're going to do it with a very simple figure that's based on C minor, the first chord of the backing track. What we're going to do, hold C right here, and simply play notes above while we hold that root. And what notes are we going to play above? A very simple figure. Here's our standard C minor location, so 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. That's just minor pentatonic. But I'm going to add in a flat 5 right here because it's a very common note, very easy to play. And I'm going to add in the natural 6 right here because we're playing C minor as a 2 chord. 2 chords have natural 6s. That's the main color note of that sound. And I'm also going to add a 2 on top. Also another very common note that you can play over this chord. And that gives us a very easy figure that's just flat 3, 4, flat 5, next string, 5, 6, flat 7, next string, 1, 2, flat 3. You notice it's always the same fingering, right? I'll do it with pointer, ring, pinky, next string, pointer, ring, pinky, next string, pointer, ring, pinky, all while holding the root down with the middle finger. So if I just play it by itself, sounds like this. Notice, hear that root? It's still ringing because I'm holding pressure the whole time. If you're doing this and you notice all of a sudden that ring finger, or excuse me, middle finger dies out, that means you accidentally release pressure. You don't want the movement of the other fingers to influence the pressure of that middle finger. Hold it down the whole time. Right? Maybe you could do stuff like pick the hold or the holding note with the pick, and then pick the other notes with your fingers. If you want to do stuff like that, it's kind of fun. Let's try this over the backing track. Very simple. Same idea, just running up. For extra difficulty, try to do all of those other little moves with hammer-ons and pull-offs, not picking. So, right? So I'm picking each string once and then hammering on the whole time, again, while holding the middle finger. That's really tricky, so good luck with that one. And a lot of these, of course, sounds are pretty cool too. You can use this as an exercise, but it also sounds cool. Then you do the exact same thing, but instead of holding that root with the middle finger, we hold the root with all of the other fingers. So let's hold it with the pointer finger. Notice what happens. A lot of the notes that I just played, like that flat 3, 5, and 1, were back here. Not possible to play right now because of the fingering that I am choosing. I'm choosing to hold my pointer finger here. How am I going to play these notes? I'm not going to sprout out like a mutant finger out of the side of my hand and start playing these notes. Probably not going to happen in this video, right? So I have to find the notes over here. Again, adapting your note location based on the fingering that you happen to be on. So I could do whatever. This one's actually really nice because I can hold the whole bar down and just get good notes all at once. That's actually pretty tough. Let me do, right? Pretty cool sound, right? Trying to hold that root, doing some pull-offs above. Same exact thing with the ring finger. Okay, so what can I do? I can play 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5 right there with the pinky, but I can also play flat 5 right here with the pointer finger. Again, adapting your note locations to the fingering you're choosing. Pretty cool. That's a tough one. So hammer on pull off right here while holding the ring finger, by the way. Grabbing the pinky underneath. All pretty tough trying to keep that ring finger. Flat 5, 5, 4, and flat 3. Maybe add a little 2 right there. Definitely tricky. So that's holding the ring finger. And then, of course, same thing, hold the pinky. Notice what happens now. Some of the notes that I've been playing over here, like that flat 5, flat 7, or flat 3, not possible. How am I going to play those notes, right? If I'm forcing myself to hold my pinky down, am I going to sprout a mutant finger out of the side of my hand and start playing the notes? No, I'm not, I think. So for this part, I have to find those notes in this area. So for example, this flat 5, or excuse me, flat 7 right here, and the flat 5 really, that flat 7 is a B flat. I can play that note right here, right? So knowing your note locations based on the fingering that you happen to find yourself in. So I could do like this. Notice you can always hear that root ringing. It's kind of cool. The hammer on pull-off stuff might be kind of tricky. What might happen for some people, if your pinky is not up on the fingertip, if it's too flat like this, you might go to do this little 2, 3 hammer-on pull-off, and you might notice, oh, the string's dead because your pinky is too flat. You got to make sure that pinky's up on the fingertip so that G string can freely move underneath. Right? Get some pretty cool chords out of that position too. The other thing you can do with this that's also really great is change the low note that you're actually holding. And an easy thing to do is just change that note based on the chord happening in the backing track or the chords that you're playing over. So I was holding C, the root of C minor, the first chord. How about I do this? Hold C for the C, but then hold F for the F. So I'm actually changing my holding low note. I'll do something really simple. C right here with the ring finger, middle finger for the F right there, right? C, F right here, right? C down here with the pointer, F with the pointer, right? C down here with the middle, F with the middle, right? Pretty tricky to do. Not only is this, physically demanding because we're holding fingers and moving others, but we also have to know where those notes are, right? As I moved around the fretboard, I was grabbing different C's depending on where I was and different F's depending on where I was. So this sort of thing doubles as a technical exercise, but also a fretboard knowledge note location exercise. Because if you're doing something and you have to hold C in the bass, but you're over here, this C is probably not feasible, nor is this one. So you have to say, oh, C over here is there or here, and you grab those notes. It's kind of a nice thing to improvise or create while forcing yourself into specific parameters. Like, I have to hold C in the bass when there's a C chord, or I have to hold F in the bass when there's an F chord. Again, it forces you into a box, and your knowledge will help you get out of that box, right? And that knowledge is knowing where the notes are for sure. All right, so now let's do the original movement that we came up with that was based on the original exercise, and that was simply two melodies moving at the same time in the key. And we did that in the key of B flat, and guess what key we're in? B flat. So we can just do the same ideas on top of this track, see what happens. So I'm gonna take the first idea that we came up with, the little short one, which had two melodies. The top melody simply walking down 4 notes of the key, so I'll walk down like that. And then it had a bottom melody kind of counteracting, walking up 3 notes. It sounded like that. Of course, that exercise was this, if I started right here, so. Already really cool, again, trying to hold the notes together. And I'm gonna do that idea, that same movement, right? Basically the top melody of my chord, 1, 7, 6, 5, bottom melody 1, 2, 3. But I'm gonna do that on every chord in the key. So I'll do that on B flat, which is what I'm doing right now. Now I'm gonna do it on C minor, the next 2 chords. C minor's 1, 7, 6, 5 on the top, 1, 2, 3 on the bottom, exactly like we talked about. Pretty cool. D minor, same thing. Right? E flat major 4 chord. F major 5 chord. This one's tricky. Yeah, I already messed it up. Trying to hold the notes together, of course. G minor 6 chord. That one's also tricky. 7 chord right here. A minor 7 flat 5. That one's probably my favorite. And then back to B flat. Right, so a lot of cool stuff you can do with this. You can play them in that kind of very subtle way. Let the notes bleed out together. Another one. And then kind of dip into something else. This idea starts on the high E string, so maybe you can do some sort of idea, and then when you get to that high E string, jump into it, right? So. It's such an interesting flavor that sounds nothing like kind of standard minor stuff, which is honestly what we've been getting a lot out of this series. Taking exercises, turning them into movements that sound super unique, and they're all based on those exercises. I would also maybe do these on different strings. I just did it on the high E string right there, talked about how you should practice these on different strings, so maybe I'll do it on the B string right here. The shape I'm gonna play is this, but now here on the B string. Again, fingering looks slightly different, something you'll have to practice. And I'm kind of stringing a couple of them together. Really cool figures, of course. And definitely, you don't have to always play them like the exercise where you're, you know, holding the notes together, even though that does give you that really interesting flavor. You can play them more kind of single notes. You get this like, also pretty cool. You can even do it in time. Like if I go like, cool, you know, just a different little flavor. Not really the exercise anymore because we're not holding the notes, but still pretty cool. And then we can do the longer version, you know, whichever ones you want to practice or whichever ones you come up with. I'll do my longer version right here, the original. That was this, so. Right, kind of ending on a little 3 root of C minor one more time, so. Very cool flavor, big fan of that one. We did the variation where we were doing 2 notes instead of 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, like that. A note up, a note on the top, a note below, top, below. We were doing 2 notes, and I'll play the one up here, which I like. That's just one of my favorite ones. I can imagine maybe someone doing like a solo and they get to the end of their solo and they're kind of building energy, and then as it tapers off and kind of ends, they end like this. Like maybe a fade out or something. If someone did that, I would be so pumped. Like it would sound so cool because it's such a different flavor on top of all the other stuff that you would probably hear people do over a standard track like this, a lot of normal licks. So very cool flavor, huge fan of that. And by the way, I'm just running it. I'm not doing anything different than what we did earlier. I'm just abiding by the technique, abiding by the exercise, and abiding by the pattern, and it just sounds so cool. So there's so much stuff you can do with this, and that's just one example, right? Tons of stuff you can do with these. The other idea we were messing with was the idea based on sixth. We started playing those horizontally on the fretboard. Very easy, you're probably already playing them. And again, I kind of look at that as simply 3-1 of every chord in the key, 3-1 of B flat, 3-1 of C minor, 3-1 of D minor, however you want to look at it. But then we were taking those figures, forcing ourselves to play it in one position, right? So we can't just continuously move up like this, same strings. We have to play it like this, right? Which is a great exercise just in of itself, just playing them like little chords, right? Very tricky. And then we were also doing what? Playing a pattern, low, high, low, high, low, high, but we were holding the notes into each other, giving us that dual melody sort of sound. Sounds like this. Still a couple notes I'm not holding as long as I want. Difficult passage for sure, but sounds really great. One more time. Something else to do is I'm kind of running the entire passage as much as I can, but also practice running only maybe like half of it and dipping into something else so you don't always feel committed to run the entire thing. So break it into a smaller thing. So maybe I'll stop in the middle like this. Right, just kind of continuing with those little chordy moves, stopping halfway. Dipping back into kind of generic C minor stuff. Let's try it a little faster. This one's pretty tough. Let's see what happens. That might be a little too fast, like that. That's too fast, I think, for me, for my ear. I would go... Stop this one halfway in the middle, so. Yeah, I'm a fan of that for sure. So a lot of ideas in there, difficult passages, at least for me to play. So definitely want to practice these. Then we were messing with changing the pattern. So instead of low, high, low, high, low, high, we were doing low, high, high, low, low, high, high, right? And that gave us a slightly different fingering, which will give us some different sounds like this. Again, really cool sounding, very difficult to play, but a really great one. Again. And dipping into something else, of course, a little faster. That's a really great one. Definitely difficult to play, but some of my favorite sounds right here. And again, imagine doing like just standard minor pentatonic stuff and then dipping into one of these. And that's, again, something you want to practice. Play very simple and then find yourself going and just fitting it into your normal playing, and it's going to add this injection of really cool flavor. That does it for this edition of turning exercises into musical tools. Hope you found some value out of these maneuvers. Pretty difficult to play, but also pretty cool. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out the Patreon at the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.